take two. Hey,
Okay, we did it. We did it in 2 takes.
Yay.
Woo, woo. Okay, great. Hey guys, welcome back.
welcome.
You're here with Kathleen
And Kim, and Uncomfortable Conversations with the K&K Twins.
So don't forget to like and subscribe. We appreciate that. So hey, we thought tonight we would just take a minute to do some quick review about what codependency is. So, so if you're still not sure if you're codependent, this might be the night for you. We're going to give you some key signs of codependency and to try and help you determine if this is you. And you may want to have somebody else listen to this and tell you, yes, that's you, because we lack objectivity.
We don't see
it. So we may say no, but someone, if your significant other or your children or whatever are sitting next to you and say, that is so you. Yeah. Or your best friend.
I was just thinking, if your best friend goes, that's totally
that's you.
You need to listen to them.
Yes,
because you do not see yourself clearly.
You don't. So yeah, we're just going to kind of walk through these and give some examples from our own lives. So see if you can relate to these, and if these resonate with you, then we'll just continue to walk this journey together.
And I think it's especially important and maybe especially hard if you were not raised in a family that is traditionally codependent. And when I say that, I mean you weren't raised in an alcoholic home, you weren't raised in a physically or sexually abusive home, you weren't getting beaten as a child or whatever. You may go, well, I'm not codependent. Those are codependent things, but neither one of us were raised in homes like that. There was no alcohol abuse, there was no drug abuse, there was no
physical abuse or sexual abuse.
Right, but there are other ways that you can become codependent. And so this might be for you if you're really not sure how you got this way.
Because think about it, you may have had perfectly lovely parents. They may have been really good people, nice people, but they weren't able to validate you the way you needed to be validated. So they may have been emotionally unavailable. They may have loved you. They just weren't sure how to express that. They may not have been able to, maybe they weren't real nurturing. They weren't real affectionate. They weren't real complimentary. They weren't able to really help you to feel good about yourself or help you to be honest and open with your emotions. Maybe it was one of those households where people suppressed things and you weren't able to talk about your feelings or what was really going on, the reality of what was really happening. We had to just deny everything. So that's kind of how all of that starts. And it doesn't mean it's an indictment of your parents. Now, you may have had bad parents. They may have been abusive. They may have been all of those things. And that's unfortunate. We're sorry for that, because that's a horrible way for a child to, a home to grow up in. But that's not the only way you become codependent. So we want to make that really clear.
Yes.
For those who think that may not apply to them, it very well may.
Because the main thing you want to really understand about codependency, and those of us who are codependent, is that really all we're desperate for is love. So if you don't feel like you were loved as a child, again, it's not an indictment of your parents. They did the best they could, but you have your own truth and your own story, and it affected you whether it was intentional or not. And so that desperate need and desire for love, we're all made with this hole that needs to be filled with love. And if you didn't get it, there's something that you lack. And so that's where codependency kind of creates itself in that broken part.
And you do what you know. You do what you've experienced, so we continue those cycles.
Yep, we sure do.
So just keep in mind, again, that we all walk through this world with a need for validation, a need for love, a need for acceptance, okay? If you didn't get those in your family of origin, you're going to walk through life looking for that continuously.
It's like that song, Looking for Love in All
the Wrong Places. That's right. That was a very insightful song. I never thought about it at the time.
Right? Isn't that what it really, that's what we do.
So,
and it manifests itself in a lot of different ways. But one of the first things you'll notice about yourself is that you need to be needed by other people. Like, that is where you get your value. That is where you feel like you have worth, is in that need to be needed. And when you can fix things and solve problems and manipulate or create perfection that need to be needed, Obviously we all want to be
right.
You know,
it feels good to be needed,
but
when it's your driving force, that
Mhm.
everything that you're doing, all the decisions you make is to create a situation where you're needed because you need that is so unhealthy.
Oh, you're creating paralysis in other people.
Right? You do. And we think about it in terms of, if you think about it with parents, if you're raising children because you're so needy that you need to be needed, you're going to create them to be needy. You're going to create them to need you, which is really doing them a disservice because they're going to be very ill-equipped to go out and survive in the world. They're not going to be able to cut that apron string. They're not going to be the baby bird that gets out of the nest.
Right.
They're going to continue to depend on you. And that really, in all honesty, let's be honest, it's crippling.
It is.
It's crippling them. It is not what's best for your children.
I don't know. I almost feel like that's abusive.
Yeah.
To not let them
teach them,
to not let them have their own value and their own worth, because you're basically telling them you're not good enough to take care of yourself.
Right?
You
exactly.
need me. You need me to take care of you because you are not capable of it.
And it teaches them, I think it instills in them a lack of confidence. It destroys their self-esteem because you really are telling them that you need me.
Yeah.
You need them to need you. So you are telling them you need me. You can't stand on your own 2 feet. You can't do this without me. You need me. And so they don't think they can do this by themselves. And that's scary. And so they do depend on you. They become needy.
Unhealthily.
It's this symbiotic kind of parasitical relationship.
But then in that you also create codependent people, which continues that vicious cycle. So everything you're trying to understand right now and work through and find healing of, if you are doing this to your children, your spouse, your significant other, you're creating a codependent person.
Right.
Trust me, I've done it a few times.
I've done it. So yeah.
Okay.
So the other thing is, and this kind of ties into that, is you feel responsible for solving other people's problems, for fixing them. If you can't fix them, you're afraid they're going to leave you, that they're going to abandon you, that maybe you fear that that's all you bring to the relationship, is fixing them, saving them, rescuing them. That if you can't fix their problems, then you don't have a lot of value in the relationship. That is really scary. So when you talk about needing to be needed in a marriage relationship, maybe you are married to somebody who you have created this relationship where they need you. So you're always cleaning up behind them.
Right.
You're always fixing their problems, trying to make things easy for them.
I would say I overfunctioned in my marriage.
Yes,
where I did way more than, it wasn't balanced because
we're going to get to that.
I was overfunctioning. I did all the things in an effort to, in my mind, create a peaceful or perfect or
Don't rock the boat.
To be needed. I want you to see my value. Life is better with me in it, kind of a mindset, and not in an arrogant way, but almost in a
to prove our worth.
Way.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's it's overfunctioning, and then this is a big one for us. We have an inability to say no. We just say yes to everything. It doesn't matter if it's what's best for us. As a matter of fact, we say yes to things that we know are not good for us. We know it's not good for the person that we're saying yes to. It's not in their best interest, but we may feel like it's necessary for the survival of the relationship. Like they're not going to love us, they're not going to accept us, they're not going to be they may dispose of us. We may be disposable. And that's a terrifying one, to be alone maybe.
Right.
We're afraid to say no.
And I think it goes back to what you say about a balance in a relationship. If there's one person that wants that relationship to work so much more than the other person, that other person's going to sit by and coast and just let you do all the work. Of course they're going to let you do it because you're way more invested in the relationship than they are. That's unhealthy and that's unbalanced, and that should definitely be a red flag. So
I was just going to say,
right?
I don't feel like that's a red flag for me in a relationship. If it is not reciprocal,
right?
Like I don't need to be here,
right?
I don't need to do this because that's not healthy and that's not what I want.
Exactly.
I want reciprocation.
And that need to be needed can bring about the situation where you get hurt
Yeah.
or angry or resentful, if people don't recognize you, if they don't praise you, you go above board to fix and save and salvage and do all this stuff. And if they don't appreciate that and they don't acknowledge that and they don't praise you, and you don't get, if you don't get that acknowledgement that you need, then you're angry and resentful because you've done all these things for them and they don't appreciate it.
But also, then we also feel badly about ourselves and like we're not good enough. Too.
Right, exactly.
So that messes with our self-esteem as well, which is, you know, already in the toilet. But that's part of the reason it's in the toilet is because we're looking at these external forces to validate ourselves.
And we've created that dynamic because we do everything. And the other person gets used to that and expects that. So why should they praise you for that? Because it's just what you do.
Yeah.
But you've created that.
Yep.
So it's kind of this weird cycle again. So.
And that's what you're going to see. It is very cyclical.
Yes.
These codependent relationships are very cyclical.
Yeah.
And, you know, we often call it the circle dance where you're doing the same steps and these same movements. And you have to get out of the dance. You have to get out of step in order to change it.
Change those steps.
You're just perpetuating the same cycle. So this one I feel like is one that a lot of us don't realize, that we as codependents really feel the need to be in control all the time, which is kind of crazy because we feel like everything's out of control, which I don't think we would willingly acknowledge. I don't think I would have ever said in the height or depths of my codependency that I was so in control. I felt this desperate need to hang on to and control, and to avoid conflict, and to keep the peace at all cost. And I lost my voice. I lost who I was. I disappeared is actually how I've explained it. I disappeared for years and years and years in an effort to keep peace in my home, in an effort to feel safe and worthy, and to keep my children safe. And that may be emotionally, you know, maybe emotional safety, maybe physical safety. For me, it was very much emotional safety for myself and my children, because, you know, it was scary sometimes in my house. And so, you know, I kind of manipulated things and kept the peace and things and tried to control. What I used to say is I managed his feelings of my ex. I managed his feelings in an effort to stay safe. And I actually kind of almost like wore it as a badge of honor, like, you know, that's my job. My job is to manage his feelings, which is not. It is his job to manage his feelings.
Exactly.
But that's part of that codependent and that wanting to control. And, you know, if I don't do it, what will happen? Will he leave? Will he hurt us? Will physically or emotionally? And just, you know, that lack of control, not knowing, is terrifying.
Right.
For a codependent.
We don't like to not know what's going to happen and be in control. So really, if you're in a relationship where you find yourself avoiding conflict at all costs, that should be a red flag. You don't want to upset anyone, your partner, whoever. And so you give in, you do anything, whatever it takes, you give in, you do things you don't really want to do. Maybe you compromise your own values.
For sure.
Because you're so afraid of the conflict that you act in ways that you're not even comfortable with. So conflict actually brings up a sense of panic in the codependent, because we're so afraid that if we express our own opinions, if we express our own feelings, if we disagree with the dysfunctional person we're in a relationship with, they will leave us. They will withdraw from us. We will be rejected, and we can't handle that. So we keep the peace at all costs.
Again, that's that desperate need for love. We will feel unloved if they withdraw all of that from us. Yeah.
So we feel like if we're not fulfilling their every need, that they may leave. So we feel that we have no value if we don't fill all their needs all the time. If we're not making them feel good about themselves all the time, they might just abandon us. They may reject us.
And so we may be dishonest,
right?
When they really could benefit from the truth in love, and go, you know, that's actually not, what you're doing is not what's best for our family. What you're doing is not what's best for you. And, you know, we may not call them on it. You may let them do that bad behavior.
And that kind of goes back to trying to maintain the relationship. There's an unbalance there. So you're really trying to hold on to this relationship. Mm-hmm. You're just trying to make sure you can, just hold on to this relationship at all costs, even at the cost of yourself.
Yep.
You lose yourself, as Kim said. Mm-hmm. We lose our voice.
I did.
We don't even know who we are, what we want, what we like, what we feel anymore. And we're just doing whatever it takes to hold on to that at all costs. So, because we don't really, when you get beaten down in a relationship like that, when you're codependent, you tend to gravitate towards people who may be controlling or narcissistic and those kinds of things, and that will beat you down in the relationship. So you don't even trust yourself anymore. Mm-hmm. You don't trust yourself to see things clearly, even though you may be seeing the truth, but you deny it. That's the blinder you put on. You put on these blinders, so you don't even trust yourself to evaluate reality anymore. Okay.
Even if your body is telling you something's not right, you dismiss and go, "Oh, it must be my imagination. Mm-hmm. Oh, everything's fine." But we've all, I think women have this almost like a sixth sense where we feel things, and but I think we're taught in society not to listen to our gut, and that we're being overly emotional, and that we need to just sit back and be quiet. And we are taught, and so therefore we learn not to trust ourselves.
And that's where that perfectionism comes from too.
Yeah.
We're so driven to do everything perfectly right. We want to do everything right. We want people to validate us. So if we make any mistakes or we fail at something, heaven forbid that there's any kind of failure, then we just beat ourselves up and we just feel like people are, again, rejection, abandonment, people leaving, all of those things. So it's hard for us to do anything but be perfect.
Yes.
We want to be
strive
perfect.
to be perfect.
Strive to be perfect.
That's a lot of pressure.
It is a lot of a lot of pressure on ourselves. So, but if we really feel like our value in this relationship comes from us saving this person, fixing this person, making life easy for them, like the parent with their kids that's always trying to make life easy. We don't want them to have any struggles. We don't want them to suffer in any way. If that's where our value comes from, that's not healthy, because you're not really partnering with someone. You're not parenting your child. You're not teaching them about real life. Okay, so I think codependents do tend to clean up mess a lot. And we gravitate towards those people who need to be fixed. We gravitate towards those people who are dysfunctional. Because they make us feel needed. Right? They feel that need to be needed. But it gives us something to take the focus off ourselves, put it on them to fix them.
Yeah.
Because they need all the attention.
Feel good about ourselves.
So it makes us feel like everything's okay for us. But it's up to us just to fix them. We've got to fix all their problems.
Well, that's not good.
Yeah. So.
No, we're not.
Yeah. So we already did that one. Yeah.
Yeah, we actually really talked about that. Okay. We actually talked about that too. Suppressing the wants?
Yeah, we do. Because we don't even know.
Well, okay, so one of the things we do is we suppress our wants, our needs, our preferences. And I talked about kind of how I disappeared and I lost myself for years. And I really didn't matter. My kids mattered, my husband mattered, but I no longer mattered. I never took into consideration what was best for me.
Right.
I would sacrifice my own health and effort. I was very much a martyr, where I would sacrifice sleep, sacrifice eating the best food. Like I would give them the healthy food and I would eat the crappy food, because really when you think about it, it had to be because I valued them more than myself, which is kind of painful to say.
Yeah.
But why else would you do something like that? And so
felt selfish if we took care of ourselves.
True.
Guilty and selfish.
True.
I've been listening to a lot of podcasts. Yeah. And this is something that they all bring up. This losing of yourself and the guilt over saying, hey, I like this, or I don't like that, or I want this, or I don't want that.
And having no boundaries.
Right. And yeah, exactly. And not being able to say, you should be, in any healthy relationship, it's okay to have your own preferences, things that you like and you don't
have
like.
Your own opinion.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it needs to be okay that you have your own opinion.
Right. It can't create a war.
And you need to have a safe place to say, this is actually what I want. This is what I don't want.
Mm-hmm.
This is my boundary. If you cross it, this is what happens. That's actually a healthy response. Just letting people run over you and taking care of everybody else at the detriment of yourself. Those are like, we have boundaries that we put on for others, but we also have boundaries that we need to use on ourselves. We talk about you having a boundary with work and like making sure you stop working at a certain time. And that's a personal boundary. One of my boundaries right now is I really want to make sure I take care of myself and do things that bring me joy and that are fun. One of the things I learned when I was finding myself again, which I know sounds cheesy, but I literally didn't know who I was. I didn't, people would ask me what my hobbies were. I literally couldn't think of a hobby. I didn't have one. I didn't know what I liked. I didn't know what I didn't like. And I went on this journey and this quest to really learn who I was and find what brought me joy. And one of the things I learned early in this process was that fun was very important to me. And that everything I did needed to have an element of fun in it. Whether it's work or play, I need to have fun. And so even at work, we laugh a lot and we have fun, because that is a value that's important to me. And that's okay. Some people think that's very frivolous. That's okay for them. This is what's best for me.
Gets us through the day.
And that's one of the things I had to learn in finding myself again. And so I will freely say that I swung too far on the other side of the pendulum. So I went from like never having fun to wanting to have fun all of the time. And my kids were like, oh my gosh, so for me, singing is fun. So I would, go out and sing, and they're like, you're always out singing. And it was also probably a blinder and an avoidance technique of keeping busy. At the time, it was
okay.
At the time when I was doing it, really all the time, I would say, especially if I had a really bad day, it was how I would shake off the day, is what I would say. As I just needed to shake off the day, because I go into this other world where there was no stress and there was no pain. It was just doing something that fed my soul. And I would tell my kids, I'm like, I know I'm doing it too much. Like, I know I'm doing too much. And I would say, I kind of feel like it's like Forrest Gump. Like in the movie Forrest Gump, where he went running and he ran and ran and ran and ran. And then one day he said, okay, I'm going to go home now. I said, one day I'm going to be done. And I understand.
And find the balance again.
I understand it's a lot. But this is where I am right now. And allowing myself to work through my pain and to find myself again is really, but it wasn't perfect,
Right.
I swung a little too far. I feel like I'm balancing out though.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, for sure. Yeah. For sure.
She was worried about me. I knew I would be fine.
Yeah.
One day I would stop running and go, I'm going to go home now.
Yeah. But think about, these are some red flags for yourself. So if you're afraid to speak up or set boundaries because of someone else's reaction, if it's scary, if you're scared to do that because you don't know how they're going to react, or if you're going to feel really guilty, that's a problem. So you should recognize that as a red flag. And if it's one of those things where you feel like you just can't survive on your own, you can. But if you're so afraid of being alone that you compromise yourself, that's a problem. That's a red flag, because you can be. And that's why I think it's scary for people to be alone and reflect on themselves and just introspect and look at their feelings and who they are and where they're at. So if you never make the relationship about yourself, about your needs, your wants, your preferences, if you're afraid to express those in your relationship because you're afraid your partner will leave you, if you disagree,
or belittle you, or make you feel like your wants and needs are not important,
or that's stupid, or it's dismissive,
that's a trigger for me.
That is a huge red flag. If you're in a relationship right now where they dismiss your feelings, your desires, your wants, to the point where it's hurtful, they criticize you, they put you down, whatever, or you just don't say those things because you know how they're going to react, that's a problem. That is not a healthy relationship. That is part of the codependent cycle.
Absolutely. Okay, let's see. I feel like we covered a lot of these. Yeah, talked about them so much.
Yeah.
this one I think is important. If you have a hard time identifying your own feelings and your own needs, as codependents, we are very much in denial. We lack objectivity, which means we don't see ourselves clearly. So if you can't pinpoint what you're feeling, or if you use the same kind of word like frustrated all the time, you're like, I'm so frustrated. You're not identifying what you're actually feeling. And so that's a codependent response versus a healthy response. A healthy response would be like, you know what? I feel really hurt and I feel like I wasn't heard. And it makes me feel like you don't value me. That is a healthy response versus I'm just frustrated and you can't really pinpoint it. And when you're used to being there for everybody else and making everything about them, and we lose sight of ourselves, and it's not reciprocated. There's nobody over there going,
they want it to be all about you.
Let's take care of you. What do you need? If you don't ever hear that, that is an out of balance relationship. And
Red flag.
let's like your kids aren't going to do that. Your kids aren't going to go, Mom,
what do you need?
What do you need? So let's be realistic here. We're not talking about those relationships. With your kids, you are going to do more giving than receiving. So I want to make sure we're clear and healthy.
But in your partnerships, it should be, even friendships. It should be that way. So if you really feel like your role is to make the other person feel better, like we said, fix them, save them, rescue them, make it life easy for them. Even if you put your own self at risk or just sacrifice yourself, that's a red flag. If you need to be the savior, if you need to be needed by that person, and you'll do anything to make sure that they need you, that is so unhealthy. If you're identifying yourself now, you are a codependent, and you need to, I shouldn't say you need, we suggest that you walk through this healing journey, that you begin to identify these things.
If
and
you
heal.
are always in crisis, or the people you connect yourself to are always having a crisis,
drama.
Everything is always
chaos.
The most horrible thing ever, chaos. That is a codependent response.
Yes.
And if you are in relationship with people who are always having a crisis, that is a codependent relationship. You are probably solving their problems all the time because it feels good.
They're always in crisis because they have learned that too.
That's not normal. Normal people are not always in crisis. That is a codependent relationship there.
For sure. So just to kind of recap, that need to be needed, the unbalanced relationship. If you only feel important, valued, or have worth when your partner needs you, that's a red flag. But you may then be drawn to choose partners who are needy, in crisis, have addictions, have mental health issues, who are struggling and have one problem after another. That's who you're going to be drawn to, because that gives you the opportunity to demonstrate your worthiness,
your superhero,
your savior complex.
Yes, so we really do.
Ask yourself if you're in a relationship because you need to be needed. You may not be able to even identify that right now, but that's why we gave you some of these examples so you can see kind of what that looks like.
So that's a really good opportunity, though, for you to do some soul searching.
Yes,
and to really evaluate, who am I? Who am I? Outside of what my job is, outside of my roles in the world, my role as a friend, my role as a mom, my role as a wife, my role as a sister. Who am I? What kind of person am I? What do I need? These are questions that we are responsible. Nobody else can manage us, and nobody else is responsible to fulfill our needs. We can't look to our partners, our friends to give us what we need. Really, ultimately, in a healthy relationship, we provide what we need, and everybody else is just icing on the cake.
Right.
What do I love? What brings me joy? What brings me peace? That was a real, and I'll tell you, when I first started evaluating it, because I didn't know, I was very frustrated, and actually I was very frustrated. I was angry. I was mad because I felt like, how did I get this far in my life? Because I was probably in my early 40s then. And I thought, that was a long time ago, friend. How do you get to be 40 funky years old and you don't even know what you love? Like, it just
You
made
don't even know
me
what you
mad.
like, what you want to do.
Yeah,
with
that
your
I have
spare
let
time.
myself go
Right.
that far.
We didn't have spare time because we always kept ourselves so busy we couldn't deal with our stuff.
Putting everybody else first.
So we have to try and figure out how to develop our sense of self and how to develop that balance.
What am I good at?
Yeah, exactly. My mom was an artist, and I didn't realize this for years until really, I know she painted a little bit when I was in high school, middle school or high school, but I think she kind of left that all behind. And then after we were all out of school, she started dabbling in these other mediums, and she was an artist and she was creative. She had a very creative spirit. And I felt kind of a sadness that all kind of fell by, the wayside while we were all growing up. Of course, I know kids take your time, but she had no outlet for that artistic spirit in her. And later when I saw some of her drawings, some of her paintings, I was just in awe and thought, wow, she was artistic, and I didn't realize that.
So imagine what that feels like when you have this gift and you have this thing that brings you joy, and you stifle it and you forget about it and you don't use it. So think about, what do you enjoy? Develop your sense of self. Spend time learning about who you are now, or getting back to who you were as a child. What made you who you are? Because we a lot of times lose that in our codependent walk, our codependent dance. We lose all those things that make us who we are.
The uniqueness of ourselves.
Exactly. But we need to develop some balance and not always be focused on other people, but have a healthy balance where we are taking care of ourselves as well.
And this one I think is important. And this is easier said than done, but it's
so.
very simple. I mean, it's simply said, creating healthy boundaries. But that is very difficult, especially if it's hard to say no to people, especially if you lack objectivity. So the key to healthy boundaries is to examine, is to not take on other people's stuff.
Yeah.
Everyone has to carry their own stuff, has to deal with their own stuff. So if you find yourself taking on somebody else's responsibility, there's a difference between truly helping somebody and supporting them
when they need it and ask for it,
and saving them and rescuing and fixing.
Yeah.
So let's say, even if they haven't asked for your help, don't offer it. Don't just jump in and fix something for somebody if they haven't asked you. Now, even if they ask you, ask yourself, are they doing what they can do to help themselves? There's a difference between helping somebody carry their load and carrying it for them.
And is helping them is that what's best for me? Is it really my responsibility? Is it really somebody else's responsibility? Is this going to cause me harm? So, for example, if somebody's always asking to borrow money all the time because they're not managing their money well, is it what's best for them to keep giving them money without requiring them to learn to manage their money?
Right.
No. Is it what's best for you to keep putting money out that you may or may not have? So, those are boundaries. You can say, even if you have the means, you can say, you know what, I'm not going to be able to do that for you anymore. That's a boundary. And I can help you budget. I can help you in this way, but unfortunately, that's going to be something I'm not going to be able to help with. And that's a hard one.
It is a hard one. And so I think you really have to examine your motives, because if you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed and angry and resentful and bitter, you're probably either being used or manipulated, or you're fixing and rescuing and you're being a savior, but you're being resentful about it because the other person isn't doing what they need to do for themselves. You can walk alongside them. If that person is really doing everything they can to fix their own problems, like maybe ask them a good question like, well, boy, that sounds difficult when they come to you with a problem and say, so what have you tried?
Yes.
So what are you doing to fix the problem? What do you think you're going to do about it? So
What's your next step?
Instead of saying, well, here's what you should do, or here's what I can do, I can help you. They didn't ask for your help. Just say, well, what do you think you're going to do about that?
That's what we do as codependents.
Right?
We're really great at seeing other people's problems and having great solutions.
Exactly. I used to have a friend that was in constant chaos. Like, she was in one crisis after another. And finally, a group of us were kind of talking, and she would come and she'd say, oh my gosh, look what's happening. If I don't do this, this is going to happen. I need help. And finally, some of us were talking, and I said, do you ever notice that this is a never-ending thing with her? And we started to realize she was making bad choices. She made poor decisions. And when the consequences of those bad decisions came, suddenly she was in crisis and everyone had to help her. So the more we helped her, the less she learned to be responsible for herself and make different choices, because we jumped in to fix it all the time, to save her as good friends.
Right.
And we finally all figured this out. And so we said, you know what, let's kind of talk amongst ourselves. And when she comes one to the next, you know, and wants everyone to do all of this, we're going to decline. We're going to say, you know what, why don't you try, you know, what do you think you're going to do? Or how about if you try, tell us what you've tried so far. Well, I can't do. Well, then, you know what? We just all kind of stopped. Well, you know what she did? She moved on to another group of friends.
Wow.
She actually moved on to another group of friends. It was a group at church who were going to feed into that and buy into that crisis mode all the time. But we figured out after a while that it was all a manipulation to get other people to fix all her problems and save her all the time, because she made poor decisions. So it wasn't helping her.
Right.
It wasn't helping her.
She wasn't working through her deep wounds and
taking
really,
responsibility for herself.
And that's what we are all. We're all responsible for ourselves. And so it's our responsibility to say, you know, the things that happened to us as children that made us who we are, they happened. But we as adults get to choose a different path now. We are the only ones who can be responsible for our healing. And really, there's a lot of freedom and power in that. We've spent so many years feeling powerless. We really do have power. We have power to say no. We have power to have boundaries. We have power to heal ourselves. We don't have to continue to attach ourselves to unhealthy people and unhealthy situations. We can choose differently. And we can act in a healthy way versus a codependent way. But it starts with healing. And that's why we're doing this. Because we're walking through our own healing journey. And it's so beautiful and it's so freeing. And we wish we'd learned this years and years
gosh,
and
my
years
life could have been
ago.
so much different.
Our lives could have been different, but our children, my children's lives would have been different if I were a healthier person and a healthier mom 20 years ago. 20 years ago, my oldest child was 4 years old. Gosh, she would be a different person. She would have a level of peace that she doesn't have now if I were a better mom.
Exactly.
20 years ago.
Keep in mind, this doesn't happen overnight.
Yes.
These are lifelong habits and cycles of behavior. So give yourself grace, give yourself time. But there are things that you can do to find this healing. Research, read, Google, look for codependency podcasts, listen to things. Go to counseling. Counseling is an excellent place to start. Go to a counselor who specializes in codependency. Find a friend, and maybe you both suffer from codependency, have similarities in your marriages and whatever, that you can help support each other.
Instead of just commiserating, work together.
Work together. Don't just commiserate, because then you're all just miserable.
Yeah.
Actually do something to fix the problem.
Yes.
We don't get together just to complain.
No. Actually, we don't
really do that anymore. We don't complain. What we're doing is trying to find a way out.
We're very proactive.
Yes.
We really
so
are.
Research, read, do a Bible study with a group of ladies that want to work through this, or a books club, or whatever you want to call it. Meet with people. Maybe you meet on one-on-one, like we just meet the two of us. Meet with a group. Whatever you need to do, find some support. There are codependency support groups. There is a program that a lot of churches offer called Celebrate Recovery. And in Celebrate Recovery, they cover a lot of different topics, but typically they have a codependency group. So you can go to their codependency group, and then they have a step study, which is the steps to walk out of codependency. So, which is kind of what we walked through.
Right.
So there's a lot of resources out there. If you really want to find healing, trust us when we tell you, you can change.
Yes.
If you find yourself in relationships that bring you misery, and that you feel like you're failing, failing as a parent, failing as a spouse, failing as an employee or employer, whatever the case may be, sometimes you may just feel this overwhelming sense of failure, loss, hopelessness. Just know that there is a way out. There is healing and there is hope, and we are proof of that, because we are changing.
And if there's not a group for you, make one. Create one.
That's what I did.
Yeah, that's exactly what she did.
Exactly.
And I'll tell you, she started this group many times with many different people, and not everybody sticks. It is hard work, and not everybody sticks. So don't be discouraged by that. If it ends up with being just 2 or 3 people who consistently come together and are willing to do the work, that's all you need.
Right.
And you can do it face to face. You can do it virtually. You can do this with people all over the world.
Right.
So, but the point is to do it and to take responsibility for your own healing.
Exactly. So Yeah. So, hey, if you have comments, if you have questions, put them below, like and subscribe us, and we'll try to respond to as many as we can. Just be encouraged, be blessed, and we will see you next time.
For
Thanks
our
so
next
much.
uncomfortable conversation.
Exactly.